Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from CRT Designs and today I have this fun kind of haunted house card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So to start, I am going to use the moon masks from Tim Holtz and I'm just adding a little bit of Tombow multi-mono glue to the back because this is a repositionable glue when it's dry. So I'm doing this first because I want to set it aside while I do some other stuff for this card. And I want to blend the background, but to do that, I need this mask. So I just kind of lightly covered the back with this glue, and then I'm going to set it aside to dry so that we can use it for the ink blending. So I brought in the Tim Holtz Ghost Town No. 2 die set from Sizzix. And this came out last year, but sadly, I didn't get it in time to actually use it last year. So there's a few products that kind of was like that. And I have a few cards that are coming up that are products like that. Because I also have the sentiment stamp set from this card. It was also a card I got too late last year to use for Halloween time. So I really wanted to make sure I got that in. So I am going to use a few products that came out from last year, but this is still available. I have it linked and listed down below if you're interested in picking it up. But at least as far as me, when I'm filming this, it's still available. Who knows when stuff's going to leave, but I just really wanted to use this die set. I thought it was super cute. I know I say cute, but it's not really meant to be cute necessarily. I just think that it's really pretty. So I am struggling a little bit with my switch. If you guys have been following me, you know that I've been using the switch and my Magic Mat. So I'm struggling a little bit to find the right amount of pressure. So you're going to see me here have to recut a couple of things and run them back through my die cutting machine just because I'm still struggling to figure out what sandwich I need for things to cut properly. And I mean, this is normal with any new machine. And because I choose to use the Magic Mat instead of the other cutting plate so that I don't have to replace my cutting plates as often, it does mean that I have to kind of figure out my sandwich a bit. And since this machine is so new to me, I haven't quite figured it out yet. So I do struggle a little bit to kind of make sure that things cut properly. And you're really going to see it here on these clouds. When I run them through, you're going to see that I did struggle a little bit. So you should tape your stuff down. I was too lazy there, and then you saw my clouds all shifted. So I would suggest using a low tack tape to hold your stuff down. And you saw that I used some black cardstock for the two houses that come in the set. And here I'm using a gray cardstock. This is Simon Says Stamp's Slate cardstock. It is the darkest gray cardstock I currently own. I don't own much for colored cardstock, but I thought that this would look kind of neat with that black. So I did have to put my clouds back through again. And I think that I actually put them through twice because I put them through and then I pushed the switch button, which pushed it back out to me in the front. And I think that here they were fully cut. I might have actually had to run them through one more time, I think, for the top two because they weren't quite cut through. Because they're so delicate, I did struggle a little bit to get them to cut nicely. And again, that's just because I choose to use the Magic Mat and it's a little bit thinner than the plate. So I have to kind of play with my sandwich to get it where I need it to be to cut properly. But that's just me and my machine. If you were using your plates, you wouldn't have that issue. But then I brought in my craft pick and I'm just going to poke out all of the little pieces that came out of the little houses. And then I did kind of ponder leaving it like this as so that it would look like maybe the house had no back to it. But in the end, I chose to kind of color them in. So that it would almost be like somebody was living there and it'd be kind of like, well, who the heck would be living in this, torn down kind of spooky-esque house? And I just kind of thought that it kind of told a neat story. So that was kind of what I was thinking there. So here I have placed my mask down on a piece of HammerMill cardstock and I brought in 3 colors of Oxide ink to do my background. So I'm using Blueprint Sketch here, and then my second color is Chipped Sapphire, and my last color for the background will be Black Soot. And you can kind of see that I'm intentionally going around the moon mask. And I'm sorry my camera ends up jiggling a little bit. It's like connected to my desk because I use my iPhone when I record top-down shots. So it kind of moves a bit when I ink blend. So sorry about that, but I do go through and I kind of blend out around the moon again. And I did lay a full wash of the color just because I find that colors blend better on top of other colors than they do on just pure white cardstock. So I chose to lay down a full layer of the blueprint sketch, and then again with a chip sapphire, and then again with a black soot. And that kind of just gives it a bit more dimension rather than having just black soot on top of the white cardstock. I really wanted the blue to kind of stand out. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And then here I'm going to remove the mask, and it will leave a little bit of glue behind, and that's okay. I knew that it would because it's the first time I've used it since putting the Tombow on. So I rubbed a little bit off of my fingers, and then I brought in my adhesive eraser, and I just used that to kind of pick up any little bits of glue that stayed adhered to the card. And they came off really easily because it is a removable adhesive, so it had no issues just lifting those off and having no problem. And then I'm going to put on the detailed layer of the moon. So I'm choosing to do my moon like this. You could do like a spookier moon, but I've done 2 of those very recently, and I wanted to kind of show that you don't have to do a spooky sprayed moon. You can bring in your oxides or any ink that you have that blends beautifully and create a background like this without, using sprays and doing a whole bunch of water and that kind of thing. Like, you don't have to have it. So I brought in Wild Honey Distress Oxide ink, and that's what I chose to blend over my moon. I wanted it to be a little more orange tinted because blue and orange, I like how they look. They're complementary colors, and I thought that they would look really pretty. And then I brought in my adhesive eraser again just to remove the little bit of tack that the moon layer just left on the area. And you also saw me blend outside of the moon a little bit just to give it a little bit of glow because the oxide will sit on top of each other. So I thought that looked really pretty. And then for my star effect, I did decide that I wanted to splash on some perfect pearls. So I did that as well just to add a little bit of extra shine and shimmer in the background. And then here is where I decided I really wanted the windows to make it look like someone was living there. So I'm going to trim out random pieces of white cardstock. This is just a scrap piece I had sitting aside. And I'm going to use this to just trim little pieces that can sit behind the windows. And I'm going to do it for both houses, though I'm only going to show you this one. And then I brought in the blending foam that I used for the Wild Honey, and I didn't re-ink it because I wanted it to be a bit patchy. I want it to look as if, the lights are kind of, some are brighter, some are darker, that kind of thing. I really wanted there to be a bit of variation between the lights. So I blended them a bit patchy intentionally so that I could have that kind of effect. And then I'm just going to adhere it to the back of the area with the windows. Now, you could not pop through the pieces like I did in the beginning, and then they would just be black and it would just look like a house that had no lights on. But I decided that I thought it would be kind of cool for a storytelling effect to think that somebody's living here in this kind of decrepit house, or at least somebody's in there turning on the lights, so it would just be interesting to be like, well, who would be living there, so it's just kind of my thought process. I kind of like to, in my head, tell stories in some of the scenes that I create because I think it just kind of adds a little interest. And then I laid everything out on the card kind of how I wanted it to look. And then I'm going to adhere some things flat, and I'm going to bring in some adhesive, some foam adhesive to kind of layer up other areas to add a bit of dimension. I knew that I intentionally wanted the clouds to hang off 2 of the edges because I wanted to have a little bit kind of going out of the scene. So you did see that I cut out 2 of those little gray pieces in the front that were going to be the ground. But in the end, I chose to kind of just make my own hill to go behind or in front of this little house. I was going to flip that one piece around, but in the end I chose to kind of create its own little hill that it's kind of sitting behind, if that makes sense, to kind of give it ground, because otherwise it was kind of floating. And I didn't, I could have cut it a bit differently, but I didn't. I could have cut it taller, but I didn't do that. I let it be the small version that little hill is. And it just they would have been sitting on the same level, and it would have given less visual interest. So I did end up kind of creating it a bigger hill to sit on so that it's it's behind the first house, but it's also above it. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but I wanted them to be on 2 different levels. So for the house, I covered the back the bigger house, the second house we just put down. I covered it in thin 3D foam squares, the black version. And then I'm also going to put this little piece of ground in front of it with the little, there's stone, like there's some gravestones on it. And I wanted that to sit in front of the house. So I'm going to do 2 layers of these little foam squares, but of course they're quite thin and it's easier to cut them in half. So I found this just easier. So I cut them in half and then I place them on the bottom of where the ground needs to be. And then I'm going to layer it up. So I'm going to do 2 layers of these just sitting on top of each other. And I didn't adhere the other part of the ground to the house. You absolutely could. I didn't. I just left it to kind of sit there. It doesn't move, so it doesn't really matter. But if you were concerned, you could add glue to the top of like the gravestones or something and it would adhere to the house. But I didn't do that because I wasn't concerned. But I just wanted to show you this. So the highest layer, so the piece that would be closest to you is actually the gravestones and the ground. And then the biggest house would be then the next. And then the farthest point of view for the viewer would be the secondary house and the little piece of ground it's sitting on. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I wanted there to be some perspective. So it kind of gave you an idea that it was a scene and there was some different things going on in the background. So hopefully that kind of makes sense to you guys. And then I had to add these little bats. You guys saw me cut out 4. I only used 2, originally thinking I was going to use 3, but I didn't. And then because I have to have everything have some shimmer and shine, I brought in my Spectrum Noir glitter pen and I just kind of added that to all the windows and the door, anywhere that there was orange, really, that wild honey color. That's kind of where I added it to everything. And then my sweet kitten, my number 1 supervisor, she's going to show up here in a second. And I left this in just so you guys could see her because I do get questions quite often about my kittens. So she had to jump up and check out what I was doing and make sure that it was, acceptable. So I'm just kind of showing you what I was doing there. And then she's going to just kind of look at the camera. She jumped down shortly after, so then I just kept going. But I like to leave the kitten moments in there so you guys can enjoy them because I know there are a lot of cat lovers out there like me, so I like to share that stuff with you guys. But so I just added the Spectrum Noir clear glitter pen to all of the windows and doors on the 2 houses, and then I'm also going to use it on the wild honey pieces of the moon. Do be careful with this. It is water-based, this glitter, so it will shift around the color. So I'm aware of that, so I try really hard to stay within the areas that are wild honey. It's not a big deal if you had a little bit kind of seep out. It would just kind of add effect to the moon, really, but just be aware that it will shift around the color. And then I brought in my trimmer just to cut off any of the excess that was kind of sitting outside of the frame of this card. This is the full front of an A2 base, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. You could mat it like I normally would. I didn't, which I know is going to shock my regular people because I mat pretty much everything. But I wanted this to just stand on its own. It's just this really cool scene, and I thought it was really neat. And then the sentiment stamp set, the sentiment is from the Boo Day stamp set by Tim Holtz. It's not. It's by Simon Says Stamp. And I just really liked the Happy Halloween from that. You could put a sentiment on the front. I didn't. I wanted it to just be this really neat scene and then have the sentiment on the inside. And then I brought in those other 2 bats that I had cut out earlier. And I'm just going to adhere them on the inside as well, just for a little bit of added extra interest in the inside of the card. And then I'm going to adhere this down to the front of my card base so that it's, the full front here. And I do have to kind of line it up, which is why I chose to use liquid glue. And then I double checked that my sentiment was the right way around before I adhered it, because I have done that before too. And then I kind of just pushed down to make sure that it would adhere nicely. And because I can't leave anything alone for very long, I had to add these really pretty stars. I think they're called Twinkle Twinkle, I think. They're linked and listed down below if you're interested in them. But I had to add a couple across there. I love these stars. I think they're beautiful and I haven't been able to use them very often. So every once in a while I have to bring them in just because they're so pretty. So this is the card I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to know what you guys think. I had a lot of fun with this one, even though as a general rule, I don't send out Halloween cards. I may have to now because, of course, I've created a bunch and I added a couple stars inside as well. But I generally don't send out Halloween cards, but I've just been having so much fun making them with things that I fell in love with last year and didn't get early enough to kind of use. So I've just been having a lot of fun. So that's the card I have for you guys today. I'd love if you'd leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye. Bye for now.